event in the previous month. Thank you so much. Yeah, have you guys been to our event like more than twice? Cool. And how many of you are actually totally new for the event? Just like, very nice. Wow. So why are you guys coming? Career in tech, right? Cool. Yeah. So yeah, so our event always composed with a little career panel about like 45 minutes. So we will have like a little like networking session for you to talk to panelists and each other. Can you go to the next page, please? Yeah. So Women in Analytics, we are a non-profit group organizing all those networking events for female professionals and also some male allies like the one who's helping you with the PowerPoint to actually advance their career in New York City. So we do want to mention that last year, exact date, last year on this date, we had our first event in Times Square. So that one, I think we got like 125 attendees, right? Yeah, sure. So like 1 year later today, we also had like our biggest event of 2019. We're really excited to have you all here. And we also want to really thank our hosts, Ariel and 1010 Data, for hosting us. So I'll give Ariel a little time later to introduce 1010 Data. And thank you guys for providing the pizza and the awesome value for us. Yeah, so can you go to the next page, please? Our long-time sponsor is MarTechApe. This is connecting to what?
Marketing has changed fundamentally over the last decade. In Mad Men days, creatives tell stories. But now, data tells stories. There are 2.5 quintillion bytes of data created each day. Consumer data, campaign data, and numerous other data sources are at marketers' fingertips, which creates an unimaginable complexity. Marketers need to broaden their skill sets for these new challenges. This is the problem that MarTechApe is ready to solve. We provide in-depth courses on data, analytics, and frontline tools to help marketers be data savvy and lead the digital revolution. Since being founded in 2018, we have built a platform of expert-led courses and helped connect more than 1,000 marketers in the US and China with new opportunities.
So teaming up with experts in marketing analytics, data science, and growth marketing, we have developed various courses featuring the leading marketing technologies in the industry. In every course, we try to connect real industry practice with basic concepts and theories in order to bridge the gap between academy and industry.
These courses are offered by three formats: online courses, bootcamps, and workshops. Many users start by taking online courses where they can learn the very basic concept of cutting-edge technologies in marketing, advertising, and data science. Since all the course content is available on both laptop and mobile phones, you can learn anytime and anywhere you want. With this basic knowledge in your mind, you can also join our project-based bootcamps featuring marketing technologies to apply these theories to solve specific business questions. In addition, we also hosted some workshops to introduce some practical tactics of using analysis tools, such as SQL, Python, and Tableau, to help people master these tools.
Our teaching team is made up of experts in the field. They're all working professionals in well-known organizations, including Google, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, JP Morgan, just to name a few. And with years of working experience, they share their expertise in industry practice by teaching courses and providing career coaching services, including resume editing and marketing skills. In MarTechApe, the courses and the career coaching services work together to increase students' readiness for jobs. It is also a station for young pros to upskill themselves for career advancement and career pivot. When our users finish their journey at MarTechApe, they will be able to demonstrate stronger analytical skills and a better understanding of the industry. We see they enter their dream companies in different kinds of areas. Our past students have gone on to work at Twitter, Square, Uber, and more.
I took the marketing mixed model course and I implemented it to my daily work. So from the course, I learned how the whole process goes and like the key tools I'm going to use, like SQL, R, and Tableau. Because of this course, I can help my client truly to solve their business problems, like to improve their ROI. So it's very helpful. I like the instructors very much because they are all very knowledgeable and always be ready to help.
By joining MarTechApe, you are also connected with more than 1,000 young professionals in the field to learn together. In this learning community, people share their experiences and support each other in both their educational journey and career development. If you have at least 3 years of experience working in a data-related position, you are always welcome to join our teaching team and build your professional brand in the field. Advance your career with MarTechApe. Start today.
So our sponsor, MarTechApe, actually has 3 different types of courses. And we have online courses, workshops, and online bootcamps. If you're interested in any of the events, go talk to Yang Fei. She is over somewhere, or Yang Yi, like she's over there. So just go talk to them. Can you go to the next page, please? And the CEO, Yang Fei of MarTechApe, and me, and also Joy, who's not here. 3 of us are the co-founder of the Women in Analytics. So if you have any suggestions or any if you want to volunteer in any of our events, come talk to us. And also we're looking for event venue like this one for our October and November events. If your company have any initiative that's supporting STEM education or women in tech, or just hook us up. So I will just go pitch our events to them. Can you go to the next page, please? Yeah. So we also have 3 volunteers today. So Yang Yi, who's over there, and Xun Qing, I think she's late, and Li Shen, she's over there. So Li Shen and Yang Yi, I think they've been our volunteers for so many times. We really appreciate your help every single time. Talking about Tencent data.
Hi everyone, so my name is Ariel. I work at this company, Tencent Data. We are a big data analytics platform. So we've created a proprietary database as well as an application layer on top of that. And we primarily specialize in time series analytics. Now a lot of people don't really know what time series analytics is.
How many of you know time series analysis?
Okay, so a pretty good number. All right, so for those who might not know what it is, it basically means following something through time. And we work in a number of industries, financial services, retail, and CPG, and we follow things through time. So an example of this is in retail, we follow a customer through time. So as a customer comes back to the store and purchases a new product, we follow them through time and can provide analytics back to the retailer. And we do similar types of things also in financial industries and CPG. So Tencent Data has been around for 19 years now. We're coming up on our 20th anniversary. And we support clients such as Dollar General, Procter & Gamble, Family Dollar, and then financial services industries and banks like Bank of America and JP Morgan. So any other questions about Tencent Data? Awesome.
Why do you guys order 20 pizza? What's the math behind that?
Oh. Is Glenn here? Well, I just kind of sent him over a list and I was like, yes, Glenn, what was the math behind the pizza? All right, he left because he heard me asking her a question. I don't think we optimized that because there's a lot of pizza left, so please feel free to grab another slice.
Thank you.
Yeah, but if you have any other questions about Tencent Data or time series analytics, please feel free to chat after.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Yes, so let's start our panel tonight and welcome our panelists to the stage. If you guys can sit next to your photo, yeah, that would be awesome. Do we reserve a seat for you? I'm here. Cool. And wait, I think we have. Yeah. Yes. Awesome. So, since we do have many people who are familiar with our event, so we always start the panel with 5 questions. The first question is introduce yourself in this format of 3W. So what's your name, what's your company, and what's your role? Okay, Ariel, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. So my name is Ariel. My company is Tencent Data, which you guys all just heard about. And my title is Growth Strategy and Execution Lead. So I'm going to break that down since there's a lot of different adjectives there. So I help on strategic and growth initiatives both internally within the company as well as externally. So that's working with partners, prospects, and people internally, whether it's HR initiatives or bringing meetups into the company.
Hi everyone, my name is Xiao Yun. I'm a senior strategy consultant at IBM, particularly the Chief Analytics Office, which sits in Armonk, which is 30 miles north from here. We are part of the finance and operations organization in IBM. We mostly help leveraging data and analytics to help our senior leaderships to make better decisions.
Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea Kramer. I'm the Director of Marketing Analytics at Gympass. And what that means in terms of my day-to-day is working with our data, cleaning it, formatting it, throwing it into Tableau so that our marketing team can use it so that they can more effectively acquire users and retain those users.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle. I'm an independent data consultant. So I work with clients on all things data, from kind of nitty-gritty database development to kind of thinking about how we design data for analytics and reporting.
So our typical second question is what type of analytics you do. I think two of the panelists already touched on that. So if you haven't, just take the time and introduce that maybe a little bit more. Ariel, you wanna?
Sure. So when I first started at 1010, actually, I was an analyst that supported clients who've already been onboarded, right? So clients who've already signed, and I was working primarily on pharmacy analytics in the retail space. So I was helping them utilize our current platform to understand things like ensuring a patient comes to the retailer and buys their drug or purchases their drugs, they're actually in compliance. And then I shifted over to the pre-sale side, and I was a technical pre-sales lead, and sort of back to my spiel earlier, that was more retail and CPG focused. And now I actually work on larger strategic initiatives, so I can help partners and prospects across all those areas.
So Chief Analyst Office at IBM is an internal strategy consulting group, so we don't deal with any external clients. We mostly just serve any divisions you can think of, like sales, marketing, HR, finance, anybody who has a large amount of data, which is pretty much everybody now, that needs help with analyzing the data. And particularly my project team right now works on time series.
Oh.
Yeah, but we call the kind of time series the short time series. Imagine you have sparsely sampled data, like every week or every month or every quarter. But so you don't have a lot of history to learn with. So there's a lot of techniques and tricks you have to do. Other projects in our division works on like natural language understanding. They can work on classification. Some deal with regression. Depends on the project.
Cool. To go in a little bit deeper in terms of what marketing analytics means for my role, because it can mean a lot of things in a lot of different positions. So, primarily it's about getting data that we own. So thinking about our current customers, current signups, looking at their website data, connecting their website data to their usage data. Are they purchasing with us? Are they using our product? Looking at really the full funnel, starting with for example, the email campaign that they came from, and looking at those email campaigns and seeing which of those ended up driving the highest value customers down the road. And using those insights to really arm our marketing team to acquire more users and acquire higher value users.
So similar to Chelsea, my experience has been working with a lot of customer data, behavioral customer data in the e-commerce space. Specifically kind of in the this new era of subscription service businesses, and also in the retail space. And I've also worked with some financial data. I used to manage revenue data within one of these e-commerce companies. But yeah, so I mainly as a consultant, kind of just help with different types of projects. My experience is a little bit more technical and less on the analytics side. I did start off as an analyst, but I kind of went on this career path to be more of a developer within the data group.
And my next question will be like, how has your career path been today? So Michelle, just touch upon that. So if you want to elaborate more, or
sure. So my first job, I started as an analyst, and I worked for a subsidiary brand within a larger company. So it was really interesting because we kind of operated like our own little startup, but we had a lot of resources supporting us. But being on a smaller brand that didn't generate as much revenue, we also didn't always get the resources we needed. So I naturally just kind of had to go and get a lot of my own data, whichever way that I could and needed to. And that, I found that very interesting. And I also saw a lot of challenges with that, with how people were leveraging data, how data was being made available to people. And so I decided to transition more into our data team as API developer, and I was, at that time we used SQL Server technologies, and so I was kind of coding and developing on the database, and designing data structures, doing some ETL work to get data to the right people in the right form. And I left that job and went to a much, much smaller company, another e-commerce kind of startup, and there wasn't really a data team, was non-existent. So again, I kind of just had to figure out how to get my data, work with the software engineers and figure out how we should be designing the databases and collecting information in a way that we could make it useful for the rest of the business. And I took a short stint and tried something totally different and worked in finance for like 10 months and hated it. So I left, and now I'm an independent consultant. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
like, can you name like one way that's very creatively get your data? In your previous experience, yeah.
So, my philosophy, I try to think about scalability and long term, but I know in a lot of these like startups, you don't have those resources, you don't have the time, you kind of just need to get information however way you can, and it's not always the best. So I try and, these days, especially as a consultant, like I'm definitely thinking a lot more about like, not just doing crazy things where there's a lot of manual work and dumping to Google Sheets and writing like jobs to read stuff and having people to, like needing manual intervention from humans, because that creates a lot of room for errors. So that I try and avoid some of those situations as much as possible and think about like how do we actually build and design things that will scale the business as it continues to grow.
Yeah, so I actually started my career as a marketing person, like not technical at all. I took one stats class in college and was like a liberal arts major, so had no idea what I wanted to do when I graduated. Had a couple internships here and there and was like, I like marketing, this seems fun. Worked in marketing for a few years and realized that like I was bored out of my mind, like deciding like what email subject line we should use. And like I had found it like so fun to go into Google Analytics and like actually look at the data. So I started to look at like literally going on Indeed.com and searching for Google Analytics and looking for jobs that I could work in from there. So I found my way into advertising and basically started over as an entry-level analyst. Worked for a few ad agencies and was sort of technical, working a lot with Excel, but wanted to get more technical. And every time I looked at internal roles at bigger companies, they all required SQL. So I put on my LinkedIn profile that I knew SQL before I knew SQL. I half recommend and half don't, because then you might be on an interview with someone and they're asking you like how to do a left join, and you honestly have no idea how to do a left join. I know how to do it now, don't worry. Yeah, so through through, kind of bullshitting my way a little bit, got a job internally at Flywheel Sports, where I was using SQL almost every day, got a lot better at it, and, did a ton of work with both the marketing team and the general finance team. And then from there, got an awesome opportunity at Gympass, where I am now, where it was going to be a global role, much more technical, working with SQL per day, but really a cool opportunity that I felt like I had to take.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So when you got the question in the phone interview, right? How do you do a left join and you have totally no idea? How do you get away with that?
I didn't. That particular job interview was with a very large tech company that probably most people know. This is the recruiter, so it's not even like the technical hiring manager. I'm fumbling my words, I don't know what I'm saying, and he asked a few more questions, and he's like, yeah, you should probably brush up on this before you talk to whoever you're talking to tomorrow. So that night I went home and I studied SQL. 24 hours later, I was really good at left joins, but it was not soon enough. Cool. Yeah.
So I guess the theme or the thread of my career is trying to make bigger impact and leverage technology, particularly analytics, to make the world a better place. In my previous life, I was an astrophysicist, and so during the end of my grad school, I realized that probably there are 20 people in the world that can understand my thesis or the papers I published. And I said, that's not a big enough audience. So then I decided to join a company which is IoT-based financial service company.
International of Things.
In the Internet of Things, financial service company in the energy commodity market. So I joined there as a data scientist in the R&D group. So I felt I'm actually doing something that impacts the real world. But then soon after I started that job, then I realized I typically put it as I'm good at solving the problems, but I'm not good at figuring out what problems to solve. And that's sort of related to the traditional STEM training background that I had. So I wanted to learn more of the big picture stuff. So then 2 years after that, I quit my job, which I still loved at that time. I went to business school in NYU Stern. So I recently just graduated, 4 months ago. So now I'm at IBM. So I'm very happy that I'm pivoting more towards the business side, but still have sort of this root in my analytics background.
So I touched a little bit on my journey, but I can go back. So my career has actually been at 1010 Data entirely, and I'm really thankful to have had a lot of opportunity to move throughout the company. So when I started here just over 3 years ago, I was an analyst, and as I said, I was supporting current clients, specifically with pharmacy retail analytics. And about 5 or 6 months into my role, I realized that I was really interested in the customer aspect of it. So I wanted to talk more with customers. I didn't really want to be responding to them. I wanted to be getting ahead of it and presenting them opportunities. So I transitioned over to a pre-sales technical role. And what that means is you go out with the salesperson once they've hopefully verified a lead, and you quantify the opportunity from a technical perspective. So you listen to their problems and you figure out actually how can your solution meet the needs of their problems, and then you build it out in a sort of duct tape hacky way and come back and show that solution. And a lot of times what's interesting is the things that we're selling to people, they don't know that they need them or they don't know that they want them. So they'll be asking for, I don't know, a data management solution, but really the problem is they need a data unification solution. Or they'll be asking for a curated report, but really all their analysts are saying that they want, ad hoc analysis to the data. So we spent 2 years in that role, and I went from supporting other sales engineers to running my own deals that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual revenue contracts, which is really exciting. I closed a new industry earlier this year, which was really cool for us. And then I wanted to do something else, so I transitioned into this growth and strategy role. And now I work with a lot of our executives. I actually work in the office of the CEO. So a lot of the work I do is with our board members. So I help prepare board materials. And it's a totally different conversation talking technically to the board than it is talking technically when you're selling. So it's a really exciting opportunity, as well as working with a lot of our partners' teams and understanding other solutions out there that can help make us grow.
Ariel, you grow really fast inside of the company. Do you have any secret?
I think the thing that's been the most helpful to me is speaking up. I always spoke up in every meeting, whether I disagreed with someone, if they were an analyst, a VP, our COO, our CTO, our CEO. Sometimes they didn't appreciate that. But most often than not, they actually want to hear a voice arguing back with them, because the last thing a senior executive wants is someone saying yes to them all the time, because they know they're not always right, so they prefer to hear your opinion. So I think I spoke up in a number of meetings, and then for a lot of the opportunities, I would reach out to the people and say, hey, I see what you're doing, I really want to help do that. Or, I would say, I need to learn, I need to grow more, how can I help do this? And I used to involve myself in projects that I was not assigned to just because I thought they were interesting. So that helped me touch a number of different areas in the company as well.
Yeah, my next question, I think I used 3 questions already, so you guys can prepare for your own because it's going to be your time. And my next question will be, so what skills do you guys find essential at your job when doing analytics or something else besides that? Cool.
Yeah. So 1010 is a really interesting company because our database and our data and our solutions are all proprietary. So that means that no one can have any understanding of writing the language and code unless you work at 1010 Data. So what I found was most helpful is being a self-starter. You really need to go ahead and be an entrepreneur for your own career because no one's going to advocate for you and no one's going to push for you in the same way. So we don't have everything documented because it's a new language and things are developed every day. So being able to go out throughout the office, ask questions, and really push and learn on your own time, I think is really important. And then I said before, but being loud is definitely the most important thing that I think has helped me through my career. Obviously, you should think through your ideas before you say them. Don't just say everything. But as long as you can speak up and advocate, that I think is going to carry you the farthest.
I think there are 3 things that I can think of right now that probably apply to any kind of jobs. One is be passionate about what you're doing. Think about whatever you're doing right now as a career rather than just a job. Second one is being always willing to learn. If you don't have this particular technical skill, it's fine. But if you're willing to learn and be able to learn on your own, then yeah, it doesn't matter that you don't know the left joint right now. 24 hours later, you will be able to know that. The third one is communication skills. As Ariel pointed out, that you have to be able to communicate your ideas. You want to be able to speak up. So that's oral communication, written communication, visual, and also one very important skills that very many people don't master, including myself, is better listening skills. This is active listening, not just trying to nod and then find the next opportunity to jump in. It's actually listen, make other people feel heard, and this is a very, very powerful communication tool. So I would highly recommend try that.
Just jumping in right here. So Chaoyun, you have the most impressive resume. You have PhD and also MBA. So how do you find time to learn, and what tool do you use to continue your learning?
So IBM has this thing called Think 40, which is every employee has to dedicate at least 40 hours every year to learn. And the company have a big internal library of workshops, webinars, materials that you can go through yourself. If you read a book outside, you can log the time. If you participate at a conference, maybe maybe I can log I think 40 hours. Another thing, out of IBM, I subscribe to a lot of the newsletters. And in the morning, I try to go through them very quickly just to keep track of what is going on in the tech industry in general. One thing that's gonna be in my resolution or that I'm gonna improve is to do more like face-to-face industry-related events like this one. So.
Nice. So to go along with kind of what you said about communication, I think the most important thing to be successful, really in analytics as a whole, is the ability to say no. A lot of times, you're working with a stakeholder, they might want a specific piece of information, or they might want every single data point you can possibly find, and they want to comb through that all themselves to prove that whatever it is they're working on is successful and it's a good initiative, so they can get more budget, so they can get a higher headcount, whatever it is. So it's up to you as their business partner to either say, no, I'm not going to give you all that, or no, let's find the best metric to use and let's truly use that as a measure of success. So, and it's communicating that in an articulate way so that they believe you, versus it might just seem like you're lazy, like you want to really prove that the data point or whatever metric it is that you want to track is the best metric and the best KPI to use.
Yeah, I just want to add a question here. So how do you actually deliver the bad news? Okay, so this campaign totally didn't work out, and it totally sucked, and your budget might be cut in half. How do you deliver that message?
I don't have to deliver that message very often. I think, something that we did show this earlier this year with data is that, for the number of hours that our internal marketing team was spending on these individual ad hoc emails, they were basically getting no ROI for it. Whereas we saw our automated email efforts that basically will go to a user every Monday or whatever it is. Those were showing really, really great results. So, it was more framing it as do more of this and less of this versus stop doing this.
Just to piggyback off of that, I think being able to communicate value is really important and find ways to create value for your stakeholders, for your customers, and that's what data is all about. So it's never just saying no for the sake of no, but it's understanding that when you do say no, it's for a good reason, and being able to communicate that and communicate the value in a different approach, or taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture again is really, really important.
The first question is what do you find essential?
Oh, essential. Yeah. Okay. I think everyone covered a lot of stuff. I agree with everything that everyone said. I think the communication is super important, and especially if you're just starting in your data career, and even if you've been working for a while now, continuing to stay curious and ask a lot of questions, I think is really, really important. Obviously, being a team player, I think being able to work with other people. When you're in data, you work with your team. If you're on the business side, you're going to be working with a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people who may not understand data and understand the technical details of data, so being able to communicate that with them is really important. And what I've seen personally, kind of having experience both on the business and the technical side, is that what I will say is that I think having a really, really solid foundation of understanding the logic around data and data relationships, I think that is super important, and that's an area that I see that a lot of people don't have a really strong grasp of. Even in senior data scientists all the way to your entry-level analysts and your data engineers. And I think that is the foundation of it all, because if you can't get the information you need in the way that you need it, if you can't rely on the information that you have, then it doesn't really matter what you do with it, because your results aren't going to make any sense, or they might not represent what you think they actually do if your data, excuse me, if your data isn't actually what you think it is. So I'm happy to talk more about that at a later time, but I think that is super important.
How do you actually make sense, build the industry insights on top of the data analytics you do in a day-to-day?
So I think it starts with a really solid foundation in SQL, or understanding if you're really good at Excel. SQL is basically Excel, but just in a coding language. but like understanding data relationships, what it means when you join two data sets together, how the data in those tables actually relate to each other, what new data set does it define when you actually combine all of these things together, and what can you sort of extract or extrapolate from that information, and how you interpret it.
So I'll just start with you, Michelle. Sure. So I know like you work with like the coolest brand in the world, like the biggest e-commerce company in the digital world, and also like the finance company. Like how do you actually jump industries? Like how do you actually, like if you have any advice for people who want to change industry, or if you want to just share like how you made it?
Yeah, so the first company I worked for was a digital e-commerce company, and they sold, it wasn't SaaS, but it was like a digital asset, so there was no tangible assets. And then I left that company and went to work at a physical like commerce company. They sold dog products, and they also were in the retail space, so they actually sold products in physical stores. And then finance was finance. And then so I actually didn't find the industry change super difficult, and I think that's what's so great about data. It's one of those things that all companies have and all companies need to be able to understand the data that they collect. Well, they might not know that actually, because I've seen a lot of companies kind of just get by with just making decisions on intuition, or thinking that like, oh, let's just try all these things, or you know, I'm a consumer of this product, so I feel this way, and everyone else must feel this way. And so I think like being in data is really cool because it's so applicable to any industry, and it's really just, you know, problem solving, and I think that is something that can be applied anywhere.
Chelsea, if you have any advice for people who want to join like sports tech company like your current one?
Yeah, so I think, you know, to go back to like early on in my career when I was a marketing person, all I wanted to do was work for the biggest brands in the world and like cool consumer brand names. And one thing I learned as a marketing person, like your competition for one role is like huge, right? When you get into more technical roles, your competition is a lot smaller. So, you know, thinking about how that, you know, applies to roles, it's about, you know, learning languages, getting better at languages, understanding like the tech perspective, but also understanding the business relevance to it too. I mean, I think, you know, in my current role, like I wouldn't be able to do it very well if I didn't have that marketing experience in the back. Whereas I think some like other people who are much more data heavy, they're really good in like data specific roles versus working more as like a business stakeholder. So definitely just becoming more technical and knowing what area you want to focus in and learning as much as you can like about that given area.
What do you want me to chime in?
Like, how do you actually like you work at IoT company? You're also currently at IBM. Like for people who want to join like a cool, fancy IoT company or like a big brand like the blue giant IBM, like what advice do you have for them? Get an MBA and a PhD, right?
No. So one piece of advice that I got very early on, even during my grad school, is not just think about what you want, also think about what you don't want. And I think it's a lot easier to follow that. And then once you limit out what you don't want, then everything else is open space. You don't limit yourself to just this particular role, this particular company. And when you look at a company, again, don't just jump on any job that you get. Think about your career. Think about whether the company's value aligns with your value, whether you can potentially achieve what you want to achieve eventually with your career with this particular company. Yeah.
Like but like, how do you impress them? Like, I know perfectly, I like Google, I like Facebook. How do I impress them as an individual?
Well, network, hustle, and find your alumni from your school. LinkedIn has this very cool free tool, which is linkedin.com/alumni if you're a recent student, or if you just go onto your school's page on LinkedIn, you can click and search all of your recent alums, right? You can search where they are, which companies they work for, what is their job title. You can limit people and then just reach out to them, cold email them. If somebody from University of Minnesota or from New York University reach out to me and then say, hey, I went to the same school, or I'm just interested in learning what you do regardless, and then yeah, I'm very happy to talk to people, and then people love to talk about what they do. So if you haven't figured it out. Also, when you want to apply for a job at a company, definitely do your due diligence of the company, right? Learn what industry does this company work in, what product does this company work for, how do they make money, what kind of people work there. So just learn as much as possible. And at my interview at IBM actually, they asked me what I think about the recent quarterly earnings report results for IBM, and then that was like 2-3 days after they just released it, and then luckily I just saw that news in my LinkedIn feed, and I clicked into it and I read the sort of the summary of that earnings report, and I was able to comment on what I saw, right? So you want to demonstrate you're enthusiastic about joining this company. You really want to be a part of it.
Like you join a startup. It's not a startup, right? It's
Like you feel like one.
Yeah. Like, how did you make the decision? Like, 1010 Data is the one I wanna start my career in, and why do you how do you maybe like you're also like having your own team currently. Like, how do you grow the juniors from your own team? Like, what qualities do you value in them?
So to pick 1010 Data first, so I had done a number of different internships that were all focused on data. Like, I knew I wanted to do something in the data space, but I was trying out a few industries. So I worked in a lab, and I worked with biology data, and I realized I didn't like rats or mice, so that was off to the side. And then I worked at Bloomberg, so I worked with a lot of financial data in another internship. And what I realized throughout that it wasn't really the industry I was passionate about, but it was the data and the fact that the data can present, interesting results and analytics to you, and you can gain something from that. So I looked for a company that was vertical agnostic, so they could play in a number of different areas. And someone from Johns Hopkins, where I went to school actually, was at 1010 Data. And he sent an email to our listserv when I was there in my applied math department, and I responded, and then we went out for coffee, and it sounded great, so I came in and I applied, and I was very bullish and told them that they had to give me an offer in 2 weeks because I had something else on the table. I don't really know why, but they did, and so then that's sort of how I started at 1010. And I guess, feedback that I give to other people, I mean, so specific to 1010, right, since it is industry agnostic, that's fine, but I think coming in and talking passionately about something, even if it's one of the verticals or just about the data itself, there's some really cool things that I've learned at 1010 Data that I'll take with me throughout my career in certain verticals, and analytic stories that I think are really interesting, so I'll share a couple with you all. Before I used to walk into a retail store, I never really understood the game that the retailer was playing on me, but now I'm not fooled. So if you go into, for example, like the cereal aisle, every sugary cereal is on the last row. Does anybody know why? It's on the bottom row, all the sugary cereals. Yes, exactly, because it's an eye line for kids. And the idea is that a child's gonna walk in and grab the sugary product and give it to their parent. So we help provide analytics on planogram, which basically just means how to set items in the store, and that's something that's interesting. Or when you're going to buy laundry detergent in an aisle, it's always going to be orange on the side because Tide and laundry detergent, people sort of associate that's laundry products. So normally if you walk by the aisles, you'll be able to see that those products are there. Anyway, so these are interesting retail things that I think I'll take with me regardless. There's a number of different products and things. Like now when I go into the retailer, I'm like, okay, I know where the good deal is now. Or they're trying to push some other stuff on us. Like when they have the private label brand and the regular brand and the pain medication, like always go for the private label brand. It's literally exactly the same product and it might even be made by them. So you don't need to buy Advil or Tylenol, you can just buy. Sorry if anyone works for one of those big ones. I don't know if I answered your question.
It's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. So you actually pressure your employer, like your potential employer,
Yeah.
like, oh, you have to give me an offer in 2 ways.
Well-
Can you recommend that?
So I had an offer on a table that was going to expire. Like so they say, Bloomberg was like, you can come back, but you have to let us know by November or whatever. And I was a senior in college, and most companies don't hire analysts 9-12 months in advance. But I thought that I was very valuable and that all of these companies should hire me 9 or 12 months in advance. So in my interview process, during all of my interviews, I just kind of said, look, I'm being really open and transparent with you. I do have an offer on the table, and I kind of thought that would be helpful. But a lot of people were like, okay. It worked for some. I was interviewed by our former COO at the time, and he said to me, well, what do you want to do in 5 years? Well, I looked on your website and I saw that you only had one leader, one woman in your leadership position, so I hope to change that in the next 5 years. And he was like, wow. I mean, he didn't say it was going to be me, but I was like, someone's going to change that. We now do have more women leadership roles. But I guess like if you speak from a place of confidence, like hopefully it's endearing and like hopefully it works out well. But you know. I don't know, it depends.
I originally hoped like to borrow this insight from a male ally in the panel, but you actually played that role already.
Yeah.
It's very good. Thank you so much for your time today, and we really appreciate you like being a panelist tonight. And we're opening up to the audience. If you guys have like any questions, maybe take my mic. If you guys have like,
I have one.
Sure.
So first, thank all of you for the amazing sharing. So my question is for Eric, maybe others. Like when we speak of time series and any audience analysis, I know like there are some regular like regulation, privacy regulation like GDPR and CCPA. I just wonder how they are impacting like your day-to-day life and how your company may do some changes to do that.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So when 1080 actually started in 2000, we were in the private cloud, and that was back when no one knew what the cloud was. It wasn't a concept. And when I started sort of working as a technical pre-sales engineer, it was still hard to get people to go out of the data firewall. Like to tell them that like your data is going to go in this private cloud was very scary to them. They wanted it internally. Thankfully, like we've now gone past that, and AWS and Azure are pretty common in all environments. But as we think of more regulations, we have Christian, who leads our security team over here, who is in charge of that. So if we do get in trouble, we really just point our finger at him. No, but we're working on certifying a number of the databases, and then there's a number of different other measures. So for example, like we work with pharmacy clients, so we take PII data, that's personal identifiable information, so like emails, names, we can bring back medical history. So that sits like a locked cabinet inside of the data, inside of the data storage in our data centers. And GDPR, we're working on getting certified, right? Yes, we are. Okay, we have Privacy Shield. So like it's something we definitely have to think about more and more. But I think that the barrier to get your data out of your internal walls has actually become decreased in the past few years with the emergence of these ideas of public cloud, and people don't want to keep anything internally now. But it is an interesting issue. But we have a lot of people in legal and security that help us with that.
Yeah, GDPR is kind of the bane of a lot of marketers' existence right now. A lot of people weren't fully prepared for it, and I'd say my company included. So one way that it's affected us is normally what happens when we're working with these huge employers is they send us a list of all the email addresses of their employees, and then we have the ability to market to those people. With GDPR, all of a sudden, no one was sending us their lists anymore, which makes it a lot harder for us to acquire customers in Europe. So it's dealing with that, figuring out creative ways to still get access to those customers without having that communication, without having that like method of communication. So It's definitely changing the marketing game a lot. I don't know if everybody here is fully aware of how much of their customer data is out there and how much brands actually know about you. It's like kind of terrifying. So from a consumer's perspective, I was really excited about GDPR, but from like a marketer's perspective, I'm like, no, I want to know everything about people. So it's definitely going to be interesting, I think, to see how it all plays out.
What about CCPA then? The California Consumer Privacy Act. Are you guys also like prepared for that, or it's not yet?
I'm personally not. I feel like legal might be though.
We don't have to have answers for everything. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. If you guys just like want to raise your voice, I think this mic.
Yeah, sure. My question is for Chelsea. So this current understanding in analytics is trying to move the transition from marketing to analytics. If you don't mind, like repeat the question.
Yeah. So the question was, in transitioning from marketing to analytics, was there anything I would do differently? I think for me, it would probably be understanding that I had a technical brain sooner. I think, you know, I was always like, honestly, like as like a child told like, oh, girls aren't very good at math. So like I took that with me, and all of a sudden realizing at age like 25, I'm like, wait, I'm really good at math. So yeah, it's definitely like having the confidence to, like if there's something someone's told you before, like having the confidence to say like, no, I'm not that way. But I think like if there was anything like super tactically I would have done differently, it would have been just learning to be technical earlier on, and recognizing that I was technical earlier on. I think, like, does everybody here remember MySpace? Yeah, everyone's like nodding their head. All of my friends and I were coding on MySpace at age 14, and we didn't realize it just because we wanted like a song to play in the background on our page, right? And like no one told us like this is computer science or like this is you being technical. So I think like as like women, like we need to make sure that we're like fostering that environment in the future for girls to know that like coding isn't something that like guys do in like a dark room while eating Doritos, like to make like your MySpace page sparkle or whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes.
Sort of piggybacking off that idea, have any of you experienced any kind of like barrier to advancing your career because you were a woman in tech? Or do you think it's actually the sort of tide has changed now and being a woman in tech is actually a very advantageous thing?
Who want to take that?
Every day. Very much every day. I think that's still just the situation in the tech industry right now, but it's up to us to change it, right? So we want to help each other as well. For example, if at a meeting somebody's not speaking up, somebody got cut, you speak up for them. Say, please, like, I want to hear what she's trying to say. If women wants to sit, and when there's a full meeting room, they don't want to sit at the table. No, take a seat at the table. If you have a seat at the table, then you can get your voice heard. So make sure you help each other out. Give constructive feedbacks to each other is really important. A lot of times, leaders, for some reason, don't want to give these kind of real feedbacks to women, and that's something we really need. Also, be aware of implicit bias, right? Not just women, and every marginalized group. There's a lot of things that we can improve on.
So I agree, but I think it also is more prominent in certain industries. So I was super fortunate when I was working in data. Those two companies that I did work at, I felt like I was very well respected by my peers and by management, and a lot of those people were males. But I was able to, at my first company especially, this was super important and I think kind of shaping my career, find some mentors at the organization in which I worked. And some of these people were not necessarily on the data team, but they really, really pushed me to stay curious and, you know, ask a lot of questions, stand up for myself, and I think that really helped me build my confidence. But when I went to work in finance, especially, I think Alice, maybe you've heard me talk about this before, but it's real. It was really bad there. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why I didn't enjoy it at all, because I actually worked on a team that was led by a female, but she was also just like awful to work with. And it was really disheartening to see that and be around that, and I just didn't want to surround myself with that kind of negativity. But yeah, I think the last company that I was at, the dog company, they were actually super supportive of women and kind of promoting women. I mean, they had their own challenges because they were a startup and it was very disorganized and there wasn't clear career growth there, but I think it's really important to find a company that you value, that the company's values align with your values. I think someone mentioned that before too. And what I will say is, when you go into an interview, it's as much as the company's interviewing you, you are also interviewing the company. So don't think of it as a one-sided interview. You're there to learn more about the people and understand the culture and see if this is a place that you really want to be and you can see yourself growing in.
So, any other questions? Cool. You go first. Yeah.
Well, so analytics is ever evolving, just industry in and of itself. Are there blogs or like podcasts or newsletters you mentioned that you follow to try to stay on top of the latest tools or even concepts?
I can start. Yeah, or maybe like touch more on like how do you learn? I think I asked like Chaoyun, but like how do you actually learn? You go part-time once you're working a full-time job.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
So to stay on top of trends and blogs and as well as learning, like I use Medium as a really interesting source. So I subscribe to a set of different like Medium articles that I get a newsletter of every morning. I think like startup, AI, big data, tech, UX, product management, like some things that are just kind of like hot right now. And then I'll pick and choose which ones that are interesting to learn on, right? Our company also uses Slack pretty heavily, and I think that people share great sources of other interesting articles to stay current. And then we offer, and sometimes from a learning perspective, like free courses, whether it's in Python or whatever it might be. And so we have the opportunity to take those courses and to better ourselves. But I think like Medium is probably one of the best ways, as well as just like talking with other friends who work in different industries. Sometimes I get coffee with other people in different companies and different industries, just hear what's going on. People are really, as you mentioned before, happy to talk about their own job. And so I think that sort of helps in understanding the market.
I can tell you a few newsletters I subscribe to. TechCrunch is one of them. Morning Brew is one of them. New York Times. What else? Wall Street Journal. So some of them are very typical ones, but also follow some influencers on LinkedIn, and sometimes sometimes people will post some really useful like white papers or stuff like that as well.
Well, I think you guys covered a lot of them. I'm also like pretty active on like Reddit. It's like the Tableau subreddit's like really good because a lot of times you'll see people having questions that like you couldn't even think of, but they created this really cool visualization. So it's cool to like get inspiration from there. And then from like a marketing optimization, marketing attribution perspective, a lot of time, there's not like a specific place I go, but it's just like trying to Google as many things as possible to figure out like how people are defining things, because like every like small conversion agency or every like data provider will like write articles on this stuff, so it's easy to kind of see how other people are doing it that way.
I agree with everyone else here. I read all of those sources too, and I think one other one that I really like is 538. Their stuff isn't always like super technical, but they incorporate a lot of like really cool data visualizations and do some cool analysis, especially around like big events like the election or March Madness and stuff like that. So I really like.
Even like you did something totally wrong like 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
Cool. So since you work with your work with data, you really work a lot with assumptions, either from your own assumptions or from your customer client's assumption. So in many cases, in your experience, like how do you deal with biases in data? How do you try to kind of make
So the question was about assumptions. Like you obviously have to deal with a lot of assumptions in your data. How do you make it more accurate? How do you make your data more accurate or actionable? And I'll touch on this really quickly because I have seen people make a lot of bad assumptions and that led to a lot of poor decision making. So I think what I would say is try and avoid making assumptions as much as you can. And if you don't understand something about the data, ask someone. If you can, if there's someone there that was the one that actually coded the way that this information is being collected. I spent a lot of time on GitHub going through like our developers' code to try and understand like why they're collecting information in a certain way and how it's being collected. So I think it's really important to always ask those questions when you're unsure about something. There are obviously things that are out of your control, you know, like a customer's actions. You can only interpret their actions and what they're supposed to mean. And I think that also goes on to like what sort of information you're collecting and how you collect that, because that can kind of remove a lot of that uncertainty if you're thinking about the right things in the right ways.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it's about like knowing what to control for, which you learn more as you're like more in depth in like a specific role or a specific company. Like as an example, like I know to control for seasonality because people generally like to work out a lot more in January than they do in July. So comparing those time periods doesn't always make the most sense. Or comparing like specific days of the week against like the previous period. I mean, generally with like my data is like startup data, so it's not always totally right in current form. So it's understanding like what's the 80% query that'll get you like most of the way there, and like knowing what to caveat, and like saying like, okay, I know this isn't perfect, but like here's the things that we're trying to control for and try and make it as good as possible.
Yeah, I just want to add that a lot of times it's not just the data that's biased, it's the algorithm that's biased, right? So right now in the AI community, there's a lot of discussion around AI ethics. I think in terms of bias, one thing, I mean, first you have to acknowledge that potentially there is bias and be aware of that, and then just constantly step back and then check, right? And I think nowadays AI explainability of models, that's a very big thing. It is an ongoing thing that we have to collectively figure out.
I agree with everyone else. I think the hardest thing in my roles in terms of assumptions is a customer's assumption. They are either validating something they want to do or that they've already done, and it's hard to tell them that it's not right? I think a lot of retailers typically just anniversary a promotion. So if they did something last year, they should do it again this year, and that's not always true, and it's not right. So ensuring, everyone's like, yeah, they do that. That's why you guys know, go to the same sale every year. It's gonna happen again. But retailers are getting smarter and realizing that, you know, they need to like live with this mindset of data culture and really data to drive their decisions. So, you know, in terms like that, if there was something we were trying to prove for or state either in a slide or a PowerPoint, I'd always try and state the assumptions. And then if they're wrong, trying to understand why the data is proving that that's not right is helpful. With a lot of the stakeholders that I worked with, the business context is more helpful to them than the data points themselves, right? So figuring out what that data is trying to say and why that thing happened. And a lot of time it's data that you don't have readily available, so you have to think about, you know, how someone acted in that moment. But I think customer and prospect is the hardest bias to mitigate.
Any other questions? Cool.
Being a data professional, I'm sure you come across like a lot of non-technical person, be it like a stakeholder or a client. How do you make them understand like the technicalities?
Maybe like one person try to explain like one like idea to a non-statistical background person.
Yeah. So I can repeat the question. It was working with a lot of non-technical people. How do you explain a technical concept to them? So I did this a lot when I was a pre-sales engineer. You have to sell a product to the business analyst folk who might understand, but then also their stakeholder, who's usually like a CIO or a COO or a CTO. And putting the example into a story is the most important thing you can do. They're gonna walk away and remember that Tide sold in a buy one, get one free, and it didn't sell in a buy one, that opposed to like the fact that my platform can look at granular data, right? But like what I'm teaching them is that you can analyze granular data to realize that Tide sells better as 2 products than as 1, but that's not what they're leaving with. They're leaving with the story. So I always think bringing it back to a story is really important to explain your results. Whenever I give a demo, I always make sure I tell a story. That's the only thing they're leaving with. And I state who I am. I'm like, hi, I'm Ariel. I work for Tide, and I'm an analyst. And like, let me show you how I went through my day to analyze this business problem. And then you try and pepper in like, wow, it's so great I could do this with access to the granular data. Like, it'd be so nice if I had access to billions of rows of data every day. And it sounds silly, but like, you're kind of like brainwashing it into their head. But it's the story 100% that I go.
Start with, so any kind of communication, start with what your goal of this communication is, right? And you start with that goal, then you work backwards. And then you want to be able to speak the language of whoever the receiver of your communication is speaking. So make sure you have this empathy with the other party. One exercise that I had to do was how to tell my PhD thesis in like for people who are non-technical. So
let's try it out.
So basically, I think if in one sentence is I studied the big picture of the universe. Cool. It's a very fuzzy picture, so what I did was trying to how to make it clear. That's basically the essence of my thesis.
I like to start with like the big numbers that can like make the numbers seem more real. So when you say you have like a 27% open rate on an email, you can start with like, I have 100 customers, 27 of them open this email. And translating those percentages into real people sometimes helps, like, especially when I'm working with marketing people, it helps them understand what that looks like. And then if it's a model that we built out, it's saying, okay, we started with 100 customers who received this promotion. Of those, like 5 went on and bought the promotion, and then they stayed on average with the platform for 6 months, which is like less than the average. So it's about making things like a lot more digestible for people versus throwing them like every piece of data at once.
And the last thing I'll add is just, I think, going back to creating value and knowing your audience. So like knowing what problems they're trying to solve and how you can leverage data to help them find a solution or put them down a path that helps them reach their goal. So I think like some people really get the numbers and want to see all the numbers. Some people just want you to tell them what they should do and they could care less about the numbers. So it's really about kind of knowing who you're talking to and knowing how you can create something that's valuable for them.
Thank you so much. I think this is the end of our question session. Thank you so much for. Oh, yeah, sure. Like, let's finishing up here and thank you so much for joining us tonight and thank you for all the great questions.